is not meant for you. It was folklore, harmless, amusing, and conveniently distant. Civilizations used the human myth as a rhetorical tool. To inspire soldiers. To frighten children. To excuse failure in lost wars. But never in the deepest councils of power did anyone truly believe. And yet the folklore was never quite forgotten. Like an ember smoldering under ash, it waited. The first hint of smoke. It began, as myths always do, with a whisper. An exploration frigate from the Tralith Union detected an anomaly on the edge of an uncharted system. At first, it was dismissed as static interference, cosmic radiation playing tricks on outdated receivers. But the interference carried a pattern, a pulse, a rhythm. The ship's science officer traced the signal and froze. "Binary," he muttered, his scales paling. "Old code, ancient Terran mathematics." The crew dismissed him. "Impossible, folklore," they said, but the officer refused to let go. He stripped the layers, decoding fragments that had no right to exist. Star coordinates, faint transmissions, encrypted formats no living species used anymore. He sent the findings up the chain of command. The reports were met with scorn. "Artifacts from forgotten colonies," replied one superior. "Ghost signals from extinct worlds," scoffed another. But unease crept in, quiet as shadow. The reports spread across networks, landing eventually on the polished floors of the council chambers. And though most laughed, a few, those who had studied the old songs carefully, did not. Arrogance in the face of echoes. The council ordered an investigation, but not out of fear, out of ridicule. A fleet of 20 ships was dispatched to the coordinates embedded in the strange binary stream. They expected to find a derelict probe, maybe a trick of nature, perhaps a long-dead satellite drifting in silence. They went as though to prove a point, eager to mock the believers one final time. On their journey, the officers entertained themselves with jest. "Perhaps we will find warriors waiting in the dark, still fighting ghosts. Or perhaps they'll challenge us to a duel with sticks and stones." Humans, one captain spat the word as though it were bitter. The only species to fight harder in myth than in reality. They laughed, drunk on their certainty. But certainty is the wine of fools. The silence before the storm. When the fleet arrived at the given coordinates, there was nothing. Empty space, a void where even starlight seemed reluctant to remain. The admirals mocked the search. A hoax, a child's tale wrapped in numbers. They prepared to return, to carry their sneers back to the council. But then the static returned. This time it was not faint. It was sharp, commanding, a signal bursting across every frequency at once, slicing through shields and hulls as though distance meant nothing. The transmission was not in alien tongue. It was not even translated. It was raw, ancient, binary unfolding into words long thought extinct. And in that forgotten human tongue, the fleet heard the first voice of Earth in 10,000 years. "We see you." The laughter died. Every console dimmed. Every crew member fell into silence. The void around them no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. Whispered myths in the halls of power. The assembly of stars was not a place where old tailies belonged. Within its grand chamber, where the ceilings glowed with artificial constellations and polished stone, reflected the shimmer of alien dignitaries. Everything was meant to represent reason, order, and progress. The great empires of the galaxy had long since agreed. Superstition was for the primitive, myths for the conquered, and folklore a mere curiosity to study before discarding. And yet, like a ghost that refused to be silenced, the stories lingered. They were spoken not in official decrees, but in hushed voices, between weary diplomats and drunk officers after long campaigns. Tales of a species that once stood defiant against impossible odds, a people whose ships bore no resemblance to any the galaxy had ever seen, who fought with such relentless fury that entire armadas learned to turn away at the sight of their banners. Humans. Terrans. The name varied depending on the tongue, but the myth was the same. Humanity, scoffed high strategist T. Vorik of the Vale and Dominion, his voice echoing across the chamber in one such debate. A convenient fiction, a way for weak fleets to explain away their defeats, blame it on a phantom enemy rather than their own incompetence. Others laughed, some with forced politeness, others with cruel mockery. For centuries, the myth of humans had been nothing more than a cultural joke. Academy instructors cited them in lectures about false intelligence. Military strategists dismissed them as examples of how fear could warp records of battle. In the scholarly archives, humans were listed not as a species, but as a parable. Still, the whispers persisted. Legends say they burned brighter than any empire. Stories claim their fleets vanished without trace, leaving only ruins where they fought. Some say they were not destroyed, only waiting. But to the great powers of the galaxy, such murmurs were an insult to intelligence. The consensus was unanimous. Humans never existed, or if they had, they were no more than a minor primitive race, long since extinguished by the passage of time. Folklore, nothing more. The council moved on to weightier matters, border disputes, trade agreements, the usual dances of diplomacy. The laughter faded, the jokes ended, and the myth of humans was buried again beneath centuries of arrogance. Until the signal came. Ghost in the void. It began on the edge of the Dralian expanse, where exploration fleets charted forgotten corridors of space. The crew of the survey ship Asiri Vaughn expected routine boredom, cataloging dust clouds, abandoned outposts, the faint scars of long-dead battles. Yet in the static of their long-range scanners, a signature emerged. At first, the signal seemed like an echo, distorted, faint, its frequency unlike anything the archives recorded. The comms officer dismissed it as interference, a quirk of the local nebula. But the pattern repeated, steady, deliberate, pulsing like a heartbeat across the stars. Captain Ryak leaned forward, mandibles clicking in unease. Enhance, triangulate origin. The crew complied, the readings resolved. The coordinates pointed to a sector long ignored, dismissed as empty space. No civilizations, no trade routes, no colonies, nothing of value. And yet something was there, something that wanted to be heard. Could it be old war debris? Asked the science officer, antennae trembling. Automated distress calls, ancient nav buoys. No, said the comms officer, his voice low. This is not random, it's language. The bridge fell silent. They all recognized the weight of the words. A transmission meant intent. A signal meant someone had sent it. The frequency was primitive by galactic standards, yet piercing in its precision. A narrow band, pulsed in intervals that spoke of intelligence. Translate it, the captain ordered. Hours passed, programs ran, symbols shifted, languages twisted. The ship's linguistic core wrestled with patterns it had not been designed to recognize, and then slowly a phrase emerged. 2 words, simple, ancient, terrifying. We endure. The silence that followed was suffocating. Someone whispered what no one dared say aloud, human. The captain crushed the thought instantly. Nonsense. Folklore, this is a trick. Some scavenger race has intercepted old stories and is mocking us. Mark it in the log, but do not repeat it. Do you understand? Do not repeat. And yet across the bridge, eyes met in fear. The crew knew. Whether real or not, the signal carried weight that pressed on their souls, a whisper from the past echoing through the void. The Assyri Von sent its findings to the Central Archives. The report was filed, reviewed, and dismissed by the Dominion's High Council. Their verdict was absolute. Folklore a hoax, ignore it. But the galaxy does not stay quiet for long.